Good evening. My name is Sean Ulmer. I'm Executive Director here at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. I want to thank you all for joining me for yet another in our monthly series called One Night Stand. This is where we look at one work by one artist for one night. And this evening, we are going to be looking at a work that was recently placed on view in an exhibition called The Vessel, Form and Function. And this is a work by Clary Illian, who is a local artist, lives in Ely, Iowa, but has a national and international reputation. She just happens to be living here locally. And this is a fascinating piece to share with you. And like I said, it is on view at the current moment if you want to come take a look at it. The exhibition is up for a good long time, and there's lots of wonderful pieces in the exhibition. But we're going to focus specifically on the Clary Illian. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, bring up the PowerPoint here. Okay, and there we go. All right, hopefully you can all see that as my cover slide. We're going to be looking at Clary Illian's Pedestal Bowl, which dates from around 2003. And here's the piece in question, the beautiful image of it. These are we've got some wonderful photography here. And that's because a number of these photographs that I'm going to be sharing with you today come from an exhibition catalog. There's an exhibition catalog that accompanied an exhibition that we did at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art in 2012, which focused on Clary Illian and her work. There were 169 pieces in that exhibition. I actually had to go back and count how many there were. But it was a magnificent solo exhibition, really retrospective in nature, that looked at the whole of Clary Illian's work. And this was a piece that was in that show. It was lent by a private collector who has now subsequently donated it to the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. That collector is Mary Westbrook, and she donated it in her name and then the name of her late husband, Dean Carlton, excuse me. Here is a view of the exhibition as it was installed at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art in 2012. It's not on view currently, but kind of gives you a sense. It was a two-gallery exhibition. You can see there's a wide variety of work, all by Clary, and that's one of the things we're going to be focusing on when we look at individual pieces, is the variety of work that Clary has embraced throughout her career. This is the first gallery. Here's a view of the second gallery. And you can see they were kind of gathered together. Clary was an integral part of this exhibition. She and I was the curator at the time, she and I went around to the various collectors. She knew who her primary collectors were, went through what they had, and Clary made the selection of the works for the exhibition. And I had the great fortune to do that with her, and then to arrange the exhibition. And then the catalog was an offshoot of that. Here another view from that installation of several of the tea bowls, or You Know Me, as they're known, that were borrowed for the exhibition. Everything that you see here was borrowed from various collectors. Now, I had first met Clary shortly after arriving at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art in 2005, and the idea of a show really didn't occur until later. I mean, obviously, we had to deal with the floods of 2008, but once we kind of got past that, the idea of doing a major retrospective exhibition of Clary's work was actually suggested to us, and I thought it was a marvelous idea, and so we set about doing that, and this wonderful 169-piece exhibition kind of shows the breadth of Clary's work. And in the process, I became not just familiar with Clary after moving here, but we became friends. I knew so much more about her and her work, and it just made doing the show so much more exciting and interesting. Now, I stumbled across this this drawing. This is a Clary drawing. We took photographs when we visited all of these private collectors, but for some reason we did not take a picture of the pedestal bowl. And so Clary remembered that, and she said, "Oh, don't forget this pedestal bowl in the Westbrook Carlton collection." So she actually drew this, and I thought it'd be fun to pop this into the presentation. This is actually her saying, "Let's not forget this bowl. It's really, really important to me." And so much so that she remembered it, and she actually made a drawing of it. I said, "Make sure that, as you're sorting out the show, make sure that you have room for this piece as well." So who is Clary Illian? Well, it's really hard to summarize an a person's entire life in a brief presentation such as this. These one night stands are supposed to be brief. But Clary was born in 1940. I'm going to refer to some of my notes in Sioux City, Iowa. She received her BFA at the University of Iowa in Iowa City in 1963. And she was making pots even then. So she's been a potter for a long time. And she's created an incredible body of work over that time. Here, as I said, she graduated from the University of Iowa in 1963. Here's a very youthful photograph of Clary. Again, we got a lot of wonderful archival photographs while working on the exhibition. So I've kind of mined that store of imagery to share with you this evening. So you can see here one of these sort of sales. You can see, it's 1963. You can look at the cars in the background. That kind of underscores the fact that this is 1963. But then right after that, she had a wonderful opportunity to serve as an apprentice with a few other students at the Bernard Leach Pottery in St. Ives in England. It was for 2 years, from 1964 into 1965. She had an apprenticeship there. Bernard Leach was a leader in a very kind of specific type of pottery making. He really kind of rejected the fancy aesthetics that pottery was kind of going towards, and instead he embraced the simple form, the functional form, the true essence of pots, and that is what he, with his apprentices, would create in St. Ives. And here is the Leach pottery in St. Ives. And here is Bernard Leach standing there talking with Shoji Hamada sitting next to him, who was also a proponent of the same sort of aesthetic. The two of them are oftentimes mentioned in the same breath. Here with the series of apprentices. And this is Clary's wheel when she was at St. Ives in the Leach pottery. Here's Clary on the right with a couple of other apprentices. Great sort of period photo there. And I thought it would be interesting to share with you some of the pots that Clary took pictures of, ones that she worked on while she was at the Leach pottery, because these are forms and shapes that she continued in her work when she returned to the United States. So it's very rare that you'd have these wonderful archival photographs, but Clary had the wherewithal to take photographs of these wonderful pots that kind of show the kind of work that she was making. Leach had a very, very interesting arrangement there with his apprentices. I mean, as I understand it from Clary, she would make the same form over and over and over and over again, and because it was really kind of production pottery, production ware, and over in that process, you really learned the vessel, that particular pot, that particular vessel. You really understood it. You learned it. You could manufacture it, if you will. You just kept perfecting it every time you made another one. And yet, through the firing process, various glazes, stuff, each one comes out unique, even though they all share some sort of family resemblance to each other because they're made because you're making them over and over again, and perfecting their form. And that was really kind of what her experience was like in the Leach pottery. And then the following year, she worked at the John Reeves studio, also in England. Here, a photograph of the studio. And here's Clary next to a kiln, and Clary next to some chickens. Roosters, and here with some of her pots from that time. And then she comes back to the United States, and she establishes herself in Keystone in 1960s, late 66, 67. And this was in rural Benton County. And here you see her with a kiln, a very large kiln here, with her pots. You can see some of these same shapes and forms that she learned when she was at Leach pottery are still being carried on. And then in 68, for 4 years, she moved over to the brick and tile factory in Garrison, Iowa. And here is a very historical photograph of the brick and tile factory. So obviously it's ideal for firing bricks and tile, so perfect for pottery. And here, when she was working there, you see this is the brick and tile factory. She wasn't working at the factory. She was using this as her studio. At this point, it was no longer a factory. Here in a more contemporary photograph, you see it's still holding together there. And these are great big firing kilns, which would have been perfect for brick and tile, but also was perfect for studio pottery. And here, picture Clary with some of the works that she created while she was there in Garrison. Wonderful work. Again, you look at these forms, look at these shapes. She got a very solid foundation in the Leach pottery, and then grew them in her own vocabulary ever since. Again, elegant, simple, or I should say simplicity of form, and extremely functional. And a wonderful display. And then she spent the next 12 years in Garrison, but at a different place, the Hands of Friends Pottery. And here she is in that location. See wonderful stained glass windows there. This was really the building itself, the rustic. Here's how it looks for today. And here she is sitting inside her kiln. Another picture of the kiln. So very large kilns. You get a lot of pottery in here. Do big firings. At some point during this time, and I think it was probably in Garrison, but it could also have been when she moved to Ely. She would do big firings, and there would be two sales a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. And she would just save up the pots and do these big firings and these two big sales. Now you can shop year round, which is even better. Her work. So here at the Oddfellows Hall in Ely, Iowa, which is very close to Cedar Rapids, where she spent a good deal of time, as you can see. It's the old Oddfellows Hall building that you see here to the right-hand side. And you see her standing out in front of it. You see Clary Illian Pottery, her sign right there. And that's her. And then the kiln was out back. There. And you said that the Oddfellows Hall was just a perfect location for her to show her wares, show all of her pots, her firings. You can see very large selection in a space like this. Beautiful forms, exploring glazes, wide variety of materials here at the kiln. And then she moves not very far away, just kind of down the street, down onto Main Street Pottery, where she currently lives and continues to work and continues to sell her pots. It's a smaller studio space, smaller kiln as well, because she's moved or transitioned into earthenware, and that does not require the same kind of kiln for that work. So you can see here with some of her drawings that she then uses on her pots. You can see these pots at various stages of firing, drying, all in earthenware. And there's just a little snapshot of the kiln. You can see it's a much smaller kiln. It's an electric kiln, and it is about the size of a very big washing machine. So you can't get as much in, but you can do more firings. And so she does more firings as soon as she can fill the kiln. She'll do firing and continue to replenish supplies. So that is where this piece comes from, and this is from around 2003. A lot of her work is not specifically dated. So around 2003, so it occurred while it was made in Ely. And I thought it might be interesting to see where that piece fits in the overall trajectory of Clary's career. So we're going to start very early. So these are going to be more or less in chronological order. Again, we don't know a lot of the precise dates of a lot of these pieces, but this is a beautiful picture from the 60s, from the 1960s. So we are kind of starting really at the beginning. You can see these wonderful shapes and forms. Again, really kind of coming a bit out of the Leech tradition. Here are some tablewares, also from the late 60s, early 70s here. Right here, a plate and a vase in the 70s. On a beautiful teapot, just an extraordinary glaze, especially on the upper part of the teapot. A beautiful, beautiful work. And these things I've been showing you so far have all been stoneware. But she doesn't work just in stoneware. She works at the same time in porcelain, and then eventually works in earthenware. Here, a wonderful coffee pot, colloquially called the cowboy coffee pot, because it's like a cowboy hat on top of that. But it's a wonderful piece. Here's some porcelain. Speaking of porcelain. You can see how these really relate in shape and form to what we saw in some of the historic photographs from her work at Leech pottery. But yeah, completely different creation because these are porcelain. Here another stoneware piece. Again, very simple, elegant forms, highly functional, and some wonderful effects with the glaze. This is soda fired stoneware, and soda fire is where the artist, the potter, introduces sodium oxide into a hot kiln, and it vaporizes and attaches itself to the surface of the pots inside that kiln, and can create some beautiful effects and beautiful flashing and colorization of the glazes as a result of the introduction of this additional element. Here, a beautiful teapot, also soda fired. And the handle here is actually also created by Clary through reeds and through plant material. Here are two porcelain pieces, a pitcher and a jar with a lid. And here, a luncheon plate, a footed luncheon plate, very elegant, very beautiful stoneware piece. Here, also two stoneware pieces, but again with the darker pieces is achieving a lot of the same effects that you can achieve in porcelain work. here with the handles as part of the teapot itself. Here another stoneware piece, this large sort of bulbous forms with all of this wonderful attached decoration that's inspired, becoming very almost anthropomorphic. I mean, it's almost like a face on the side of that vase in those leaves. You can kind of make out a face. That's going to be pivotal later, where she more directly does figuration, decorative figuration on the surfaces of her pieces. Here, more clearly, a face articulated on the side of this pot. Again, she explores this more. She's using now the surface of the pot as a canvas, if you will. Certainly, it's a canvas with glazes. Glazes can take, many different shades of color. And then when you introduce other elements into the actual firing process, those colors can change and be altered. But she's also playing around here with sort of direct application to the surface in this additional sort of clay work on the surface of the piece. Here, beautiful white piece of vase or jar. Here, a lovely porcelain, large. Actually, it's fairly large. It's probably, if I remember correctly, somewhere around 13 or 14 inches. So it's very, very large. A lot of elements on a piece like this and other pieces that really are evocative of nature too, as a source of inspiration. This is a beautiful celadon glaze, and you can see in the lower right hand area here, you will often see Clary's maker's mark. She doesn't mark every single piece, but most of her pieces are marked, and you can tell the general date of the piece by the mark, because she changed her mark. They're all very related to each other, but she did change her mark over time, and you can tell where she was making a certain piece based on the mark. So that's another wonderful element to her work. As I mentioned, the articulation, the decoration of the surfaces becomes more and more important to her, especially when she moves into earthenware. Earthenware is that red clay, like your flower pots. She said to me, what could be, it's the oldest form of clay. I mean, it would be just clay that you dig up. And she said it just working in earthenware connects her all the way back to the beginning of pot making in the history of mankind. And she said she's really connected to it. She loves the feel of it. She loves the working of it. And she loves decorating it. She loves playing around with the surface, using the different surfaces in this case to articulate it in different ways. Here, a wonderful face, and she really works exclusively in earthenware at this point in her career. She's no longer doing any stoneware or porcelain. Here, a wonderful bowl. You don't get a sense of the depth of it because it's being shot straight on. But you can see these great 4 intersecting cats. One leaves off where the other one begins. It's wonderfully inventive, very playful. And then, inside of that and around that, she's further articulated the entire surface. And then left the rim with the natural unglazed red of the earthenware. Here, a large base where she's left areas both above and below, natural, unglazed, with this wonderful field of animals against a yellow background. Or here, like she did in some of the stoneware pieces, she's applying bits of clay to create, in this case, a face, a three-dimensional face that exists on the surface of the pot itself. Or here, again, using clay adding it on, scoring it and adding it onto the surface, and then applying the glaze over the whole. This wonderful basket weave with these stylized floor forms coming out of it. And that's kind of the sort of the range of images that I have set aside for you for this presentation. This, falls right in that sort of at that tail end of working with stoneware as she, is about to transition into earthenware. You can see that she has taken this form. She's given it a footed, pedestal bowl form, but she has articulated the sides and the ends by these additions of clay. And then she has this wonderful green glaze on the center. And it's created this really unique form, this unique shape with her own sort of it's all her hand touch. I mean, but with these additions, with these specific decorative additions, which eventually, as she moves into earthenware, become more and more visible, more and more a part of the piece. If you look at that trajectory, as I say, kind of laid out more or less in chronological order, she really begins in those very, very simple forms that she had a sound training in at Leach Pottery, and then elaborates them, builds them, and as she grows as an artist, she then puts her own spin on that base. It still all feels very, very related to her foundational start in her career, but it has evolved into her own voice in the work. And this work from around 2003, really sort of not quite in the middle of her career because it's such a long career, and she's still making pots. Her career is still going, but sort of maybe 2/3 of the way through, and at a very interesting and important sort of transitional moment where she's beginning to, or she's exploring more about the addition of clay elements onto other pots, and so this is a really remarkable piece. It is the only Illian in the exhibition, the vessel, but I certainly do encourage you to come on out and check out that exhibition. It is a really remarkable show. I think there are 48 works in that exhibition. And I think that it will definitely reward you coming and coming multiple times, actually, to see this wonderful exhibition, which just opened last month. And so it made sense to me, given my history and doing that solo show of Clary's back in 2012, to pick Clary Illian's piece for tonight's one night stands. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, and I will try to answer them. By all means, Clary is still making pots, and she's still selling pots out of her studio there on Main Street in Ely. It's always best to call because she's not always there. I mean, she has other things that she does, and she's quite active in Ely and other places as well. But all you have to do is call and see if she's going to be there, if she'll be there at a certain time, and go on out and still you can still acquire wonderful works like the one that I showed you, but working exclusively now in earthenware is going to be an earthenware piece. So, any questions anyone has? Well, we have other Clary Illians in the collection. This is the only one that's in this current exhibition. But as you can probably tell from the solo show that we did, we think the world of her, and she's like I said, a national and international treasure. She just happens to live in Ely, Iowa, and we just happen to be lucky that she does. Thank you all for joining me this evening. Join us again next month for our next one night stand. And also, check out the website, our website, crma.org, for some of our other Zoom programming, which includes the Grantwood in Focus, which is a quarterly series of presentations. And if you haven't had the chance, check out our YouTube channel, I should say, and see some of the past recordings you may have missed. Just wonderful works that we love sharing with the public. So thank you all for joining me, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.